Clay of the Mudwings, the gentlest dragon in a war zone, the one who should have been a monster, but chose to be kind instead.
And that choice, that one choice, is why the whole account works.
Today, we're asking, why Clay's core nature? Why does keeping everything close to his perspective, his instincts, his conscience, why does that make the story what it is?
Because if you stayed close to Tsunami's perspective, you get a very different story. Glory's even more so. Starflight's would be complicated.
But Clay gives you something none of them can. He gives you a heart. All right, Qibli, let's start with the obvious question. Clay is the dragonette we stay closest to through most of the account. We see through his eyes, feel through his instincts. Why him?
Because he's the only one who could hold that weight. You put Tsunami at the center, and everything becomes about fighting. You put Glory there, and it becomes about proving worth. Starflight, that's all fear and overthinking.
But Clay just wants everyone to be okay.
Right, and that's not nothing. That's actually extraordinary when you're talking about 5 dragonettes have been raised to end a war.
So let's unpack that. What makes Clay different? What makes his perspective the one that grounds everything?
Clay's defining trait is kindness. Not strength, not cleverness, kindness. He sees a problem, and his first instinct is, how do I help?
Even when the problem is an Icewing prisoner he's supposed to fight to the death in Scarlet's arena. Even when the problem is Peril, who everyone says is too dangerous to approach.
Especially Peril. Because most dragons look at Peril and see fire. Clay looks at her and sees loneliness.
That moment when he talks to her, not because it's strategic, not because it'll save him, but because she looks sad, that's Clay in a nutshell.
And it's not weakness. That's what's so interesting. Clay is strong. He's a good fighter. He survives things that should kill him.
He survives Queen Scarlet's palace. He survives Dragonbite Viper Venom. He takes a spear for Tsunami without thinking about it.
But his first instinct is never violence. It's protection. It's, how do I keep everyone safe?
Which makes him the opposite of what Kestrel tried to make him believe he was.
Right, let's talk about that. Clay spends the first part of his life thinking he's dangerous, thinking he almost killed his siblings when they hatched.
Because Kestrel told him that, planted that fear in his head when he was too young to question it.
And he believed it. For years. He thought his first instinct, hunger, curiosity, whatever it was, made him a monster.
So he spends his entire childhood trying not to be that dragon, trying to be gentle, careful, safe.
And then he finds out it was all a lie. Kestrel made it up to control him.
Which is, that's psychological torture. You tell a dragonette he's dangerous, make him afraid of himself, and then use that fear to keep him obedient.
But here's what gets me. Even after he learns the truth, Clay doesn't change. He doesn't suddenly become violent or reckless. He stays exactly who he is.
Because that kindness, that gentleness, it wasn't fear, it was him. It was always him.
The lie didn't create his character. It just tried to twist it into something shameful, and it failed.
Clay rejected the monster narrative before he even knew it was false.
Can we talk about how Clay's strength and his gentleness aren't opposites? Because I think that's easy to miss.
Oh, absolutely. Clay is strong. He's one of the physically strongest dragonettes. He's a mudwing. They're built tough.
But he doesn't use that strength to dominate. He uses it to protect.
When he's fighting Fjord in the arena, and everyone expects him to kill, he wins the fight. He proves he's strong enough, and then he chooses mercy.
That's not weakness. That's power under control. That's strength deployed with intention.
And Scarlet sees it. The crowd sees it. They're not watching a weak dragon spare an opponent. They're watching a strong dragon choose not to kill.
Which is more impressive. Anyone can kill when they're scared or angry. It takes real strength to win and then say, no, this doesn't have to end in death.
And that moment, that's when the story shifts, isn't it? That's when Clay stops being a prisoner in Scarlet's game and becomes something else. I suppose that
he becomes a threat to the system because the system requires violence. It requires obedience, and Clay just refuses.
Politely, which is somehow more devastating than if he'd been dramatic about it.
Exactly. He doesn't make a speech. He doesn't grandstand. He just says, I'm not going to do this, and walks away.
and the whole arena holds its breath.
Here's something I keep thinking about, Deathbringer. Clay becomes the conscience of the whole account, not just for the dragonettes, but for the audience experiencing it.
Because we're seeing everything through his moral framework.
Right. When Clay is horrified by something, we're horrified. When he's protective of someone, we care about them. His emotional reactions guide ours.
Which is a huge responsibility for one character to carry.
But it works because Clay's morality... It's not complicated. It's simple. Don't hurt people, protect your friends, be kind when you can.
Which sounds basic, but in the middle of a 20-year war where everyone's been taught that violence solves problems,
Hun, it's revolutionary.
Clay looks at the war and doesn't see sides. He doesn't see ice wings versus sky wings versus whoever. He sees dragons who are hurting each other.
And he wants it to stop. Not because his side should win, because it should just stop.
Which makes him dangerous to everyone in power. Because if dragons stop seeing enemies and start seeing dragons,
the war doesn't work anymore.
And that's all coming from Clay's perspective. His instinct to see the dragon, not the tribe.
Okay, so let's talk about Peril. Because those scenes, Clay and Peril, they land so much harder because of who Clay is.
Oh, they absolutely wreck me. Every time.
Because Peril has spent her entire life being told she's unlovable, dangerous, too broken to be around other dragons.
And then Clay walks up and just talks to her like she's a dragon. Not a weapon, not a monster, just Peril.
And he's not doing it to manipulate her. He's not trying to use her. He genuinely sees her pain and wants to help.
Which is such a Clay thing to do. He sees someone hurting, and his immediate response is compassion.
But here's why it hits so hard. We know what that means to Clay. We've been inside his head. We know he was told he was a monster, that he was too dangerous.
So when he looks at Peril and refuses to believe she's unlovable.
Oh, he's also refusing to believe it about himself.
Oh, that's it exactly.
Clay is seeing his own fear reflected in Peril. The fear that there's something fundamentally wrong with you, that you're too broken to be loved.
And he rejects that fear. For both of them.
Which is why when Peril starts to believe him, when she starts to think maybe she could be more than Scarlet's weapon, it feels earned. Because Clay earned it.
Not through grand gestures, just through consistent, genuine kindness.
And that only works because we're seeing it through Clay's eyes. If we were in Peril's perspective, it might feel like wishful thinking. But from Clay's side,
we know he means every word.
Can we talk about how Clay doesn't try to fix Peril?
Oh, that's such an important distinction. He doesn't try to change her or save her.
He just accepts her, as she is, dangerous scales and all.
He's not like, you need to be different, or let me help you become someone else. He's just, you're Peril. That's enough.
And that's what she needs. Not another dragon telling her she's broken. Just one dragon saying, you're fine the way you are.
Even though she's literally on fire. Even though she can't touch anyone without hurting them.
Clay doesn't see that as something wrong with her. He sees it as something difficult she has to live with.
There's such compassion in that distinction. This isn't a flaw. This is a challenge.
And he respects her enough to believe she can handle it. He doesn't infantilize her or treat her like she's helpless.
He treats her like a dragon, making the best of a hard situation, which is what she is.
And that's why she starts to believe she could be more than Scarlet's weapon. Because Clay already believes it.
He sees the dragon she could become, but he doesn't demand she become it. He just holds space for the possibility.
And possibility is everything when you've been told your whole life that you have no options.
Clay gives Peril her future back, not by changing her, by seeing her.
Can we talk about Clay's hunger? Because that's such a specific physical thing that grounds his character.
Oh, Clay is always hungry. It's almost funny, except it's actually kind of sad.
Because they didn't feed the dragonettes enough. Growing dragons locked in a cave and the guardians couldn't even get the food right.
So Clay is constantly aware of his stomach, constantly thinking about food, and it makes him feel guilty.
Which is so Clay. He's hungry, a basic physical need, and he feels bad about it. Like wanting food makes him selfish.
But it also makes him real. It makes him grounded. He's not some perfect hero dragon. He's a kid who's hungry and trying to figure out how to keep his friends safe.
And there's something about that physical need, that very animal, very dragon thing, that makes his kindness more powerful.
Because he's not kind, because he's above physical needs. He's kind despite being uncomfortable, despite being hungry, despite being scared.
Right. His compassion isn't abstract. It's something he chooses, moment by moment, even when it's hard.
Even when it would be easier to just focus on his own survival. You know what else grounds Clay? His physicality. He's always aware of his body. Tired wings, sore muscles, that constant hunger.
Most dragons think about their bodies when they're fighting or flying. Clay thinks about his all the time because he's uncomfortable all the time.
Growing dragon, not enough food, sleeping on stone, training until he's exhausted. His body is a constant reminder that he's real, he's physical, he's not some abstract prophecy.
And that makes his kindness more impressive. It's easy to be generous when you're comfortable. Clay is generous when he's starving.
He shares food he doesn't have, comforts friends when he's the one who needs comfort, stays alert when he's exhausted.
Because taking care of others is more important to him than taking care of himself.
That's not sustainable, Qibli. That's how you break.
Yeah, and you can see it happening. Clay keeps giving, and there's this sense that eventually there won't be anything left.
But he can't stop. Because if he stops being the one who holds everyone together, who takes care of everyone.
Why then, who is he?
That's his fear. Not that he'll die, that he'll fail to protect someone.
And that fear drives everything he does. Okay, thought experiment. What if the account stayed close to Tsunami's perspective instead of Clay's?
Everything would be sharper, more aggressive. Every problem would look like something to fight.
You'd get a lot more action, a lot more. We need to do something now, fight our way out.
Which is exciting, but
you'd lose the heart. Tsunami cares about her friends, absolutely. But her instinct is to protect them by being strong, by fighting. Clay's instinct is to protect them by understanding them.
What about Starflight?
Oh, that would be painful. Every decision would be paralyzed by fear. Every moment would be second-guessing.
You'd get a much more anxious story, more internal, probably more detailed about the politics and history.
But you'd lose the moral clarity. Starflight knows what's right, but he's terrified of acting on it. Clay just acts.
Glory.
Anger. So much anger. Justified anger, but anger shapes everything you see.
Glory's perspective would be sharp and cutting. Every injustice would feel personal, because for her, it is personal.
You get a story about demanding to be seen, about refusing to accept being dismissed, which is powerful.
But it would be a different story. Not better or worse, just different.
And that's the thing. Clay's perspective gives you access to everyone. He cares about Tsunami's strength, Starflight's intelligence, Glory's defiance, Sunny's hope. He sees all of them.
He's the one dragon who holds space for everyone else to be who they are.
Which is why he's at the center. Because the story isn't just about one dragonette. It's about 5. And Clay's the one who keeps them connected. We should talk about Clay's guilt. As he carries so much of it, and it shapes how he moves through the world.
He feels guilty about everything. About being hungry. About not being smart enough. About not protecting everyone perfectly.
About the fact that his friends are in danger because of the prophecy, even though none of that is his fault.
But guilt isn't logical, and Clay's guilt comes from caring so much. He feels responsible for everyone.
Which is exhausting. You can feel it in every decision he makes. If I do this, will someone get hurt? If I don't do this, will I fail them?
And the Guardians made that worse. They told him he was supposed to save everyone. That he was supposed to be this perfect prophecy dragonette.
So every time he's not perfect, which is constantly, because he's 6 years old, he thinks he's failing.
But here's what's beautiful about Clay's guilt. Qibli. It doesn't make him give up. It makes him try harder.
Yeah, most dragons would collapse under that weight. Clay just keeps going, keeps trying, keeps caring.
Even when it hurts.
Especially when it hurts.
Clay doesn't want to be special. That's the thing everyone misses about him.
He wants to be normal. He wants his friends to be safe and happy. He wants enough food. That's it.
But the prophecy won't let him be normal. The guardians won't let him. The war won't let him.
So he becomes special anyway. Not because he's trying to, but because kindness in the middle of violence is remarkable, whether you want it to be or not.
He's a reluctant hero, which makes him more compelling than if he wanted glory.
Because we trust him. We trust that he's not doing this for attention or power. He's doing it because someone has to, and he's the one who's there.
And because he loves his friends too much to let them face it alone.
That's it. That's Clay. I don't want to do this, but I'm not going to let you do it alone.
Which is maybe the most heroic thing anyone can say.
Let's talk about Clay's instincts, because the account keeps coming back to them. His gut feelings about who to trust, what to do.
And he's usually right. Not because he's the smartest,
but because he's paying attention to the right things. He's not thinking about strategy or politics. He's thinking about dragons.
Like with Peril, everyone says stay away. She's dangerous. Clay's instinct says she's lonely and scared.
And he's right. He sees what everyone else is missing because he's not looking at what Peril can do. He's looking at who she is.
His instincts are emotional. They're about connection, about understanding.
Which, in a war, is a superpower. Because everyone else is so focused on threats and sides and strategy
that they miss the dragons standing right in front of them.
Clay doesn't miss them. He sees everyone, remembers everyone, cares about everyone.
Even his enemies.
Especially his enemies. Because he doesn't really believe in enemies. Just dragons who are scared or angry or hurt.
So, Qibli, why does this work? Why does staying close to Clay's perspective make the whole account what it is?
Because Clay gives us permission to care. He models compassion in a world that's forgotten how.
He doesn't judge. He doesn't dismiss. He just tries to understand.
And when you're in his head, you start doing the same thing. You start seeing dragons the way he sees them, as complicated, hurting, trying.
Not heroes and villains, just dragons.
Which makes the violence more horrifying. Because Clay hates violence. He hates seeing dragons hurt each other.
So, when it happens, when there's a fight or a death, it lands harder, because we feel it through Clay's horror.
And the kindness. When someone is kind, even in a small way, that lands harder too. Because Clay notices it, appreciates it, holds on to it.
Clay teaches us what to pay attention to.
And what he pays attention to is dragons trying to be better, trying to connect, trying to survive with their hearts intact.
Which is the whole story, isn't it? Not will they end the war, but will they survive this with their hearts intact?
And the answer is yes, because Clay refuses to let them lose that.
He protects more than their lives. He protects their ability to care.
Which makes him more than the heart of the story. He's the reason the story has a heart at all. There's one more thing about Clay's perspective that I think matters. The way he experiences time.
Oh, that's interesting. Go on.
Clay doesn't think much about the future. He's not planning 5 steps ahead like Starflight. He's not worried about destiny like Sunny.
He's just here, in the moment, dealing with what's in front of him.
Which makes the whole account feel immediate, present, like everything is happening right now.
Even when we're learning about the past, about the war, the prophecy, what happened before, it all feels relevant to the current moment.
Because Clay only cares about the past if it helps him understand the present. He's not interested in history for its own sake.
He's interested in, what do I need to know to help my friends right now?
Exactly. So, the account never feels like it's drowning in backstory. Everything is filtered through, does this matter right now?
And usually the answer is yes, because Clay has good instincts about what's important.
He doesn't get lost in details. He sees the big picture, because the big picture is always keep everyone safe, keep everyone together.
Simple, clear, focused.
Which is exactly what you need when you're trying to survive. You don't need philosophy. You need someone who can make decisions.
And Clay makes them, not always the right decisions.
But always decisions based on care, on trying to do the least harm.
That's his compass. What choice hurts the fewest dragons?
And in a war, that's revolutionary.
Clay of the Mudwings, the gentlest dragon in a war zone.
The one who should have been a monster but chose to be kind.
And that choice saved more than lives. It saved souls.
That's actually really beautiful, Deathbringer.
I know. I'm surprising myself today.
Don't let it go to your head.
Too late. My head is enormous now. Next time?
We're talking about Queen Scarlet and why spectacle is power.
Oh, Scarlet. The most theatrical villain in dragon history. This is going to be fun.
Terrifying, but also fun.
Why she turns violence into theater. Why the arena isn't just cruelty, it's performance.
And what that reveals about fear, control, and how power actually works.
Scarlet understands something most dragons don't. If you're going to be cruel, make them watch. Make them cheer.
Make them complicit.
Exactly. But we'll get into that next time. Until then, stay kind, stay hungry, and remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to fight.
And feed your dragons. Seriously, they're growing.
Qibli with the practical advice. See you next time.